dairy cattle are a little bit different than beef cattle, primarily because they're milk producing and we're not really using them for meat as much. Really, dairy cattle production in the U.S. is continuing to shift towards larger herds, and this allows producers to maximize production and profits. There's really two different types of dairy cattle operations. There's intensive and there's pasture. So intensive dairy production is where animals are raised in a more confined setting. So you could have them in an open lot or a tie stall barn, something like that, where they have access to more of a confined area, more like a barn. Pasture dairy production is exactly what it sounds like. It's where cattle are turned out on pasture, either continuously or for different portions of the day. Some producers will actually use a combination of these two types. So at NC State, they have a combination of this. So animals are turned out, and then when they're ready to be milked, they come in. And animals are milked twice a day, 4 a.m. and 4 p.m., and you can actually watch them in the fields. They will line up in the field. They're ready to be milked. They're ready to come in. They actually line up at the door to the barn, and they're like, all right, let's go. So this is what I mean by intensive versus pasture. And then, of course, there's always the combination. A lot of times what happens if a producer is going to use a combination of these two, they actually give the cattle a choice. So like the doors to the barn will stay open, and they can wander in if they want, or they can wander back out if they want. They can kind of handle themselves. So dairy cattle. Mature cows are milked 2 to 3 times a day. Twice a day is pretty common after they give birth. So once they give birth, their lactation cycle begins, and that lactation cycle is just where they're producing milk. And then the calves are allowed to stay on mom for about 1 to 2 days, so 24 to 48 hours, and that's where they get that first milk, that colostrum. Once they get that, then they're weaned off, and they're taken away, and they are bottle fed at that point. Male calves typically are used for a veal. They could also be raised for slaughter steers, and a very select few are raised for replacement bulls. Heifers are either kept to become replacements for cows that have reached the end of their production cycle, or they're used for meat. But typically, the heifers are going to be kept to become replacement heifers for the older cows that are not reproducing anymore, and the males will be raised for meat. Replacement heifers are typically raised in feedlots or a pasture setting until they're ready to be moved in with the dairy herd. So replacement heifers are bred around 15 months old, so a little over a year, and once they reach puberty, and then they begin producing milk 9 months later after they've given birth. So at about 2 years old, they've given birth to their first calf, and they're producing milk. And then during the lactation cycle, the cows are rebred. Because we do actually have to breed them, and they have to give birth in order to produce milk. They don't just produce milk by themselves. About 60 days before they give birth again, so about 2 months ahead of time, they're what we call dried off. And this just means that they stop producing milk. And that's really just in preparation for the next calf to be born. You have to dry them off in order for them to rebuild up that colostrum for that next calf. So this kind of shows you the 4 phases in the annual production cycle of dairy cattle. You can kind of look at this on your own, but really it starts with birth, where lactation begins, and then they go through the cycle basically over and over, about once a year, until they can no longer produce. So a dairy cow has, on average, a production cycle of about 5 to 7 years. So at about 6 years old, they're done producing. And after their years of producing milk, they are slaughtered for their meat and processed. Typically, dairy cattle is what you're going to get if you go to a fast food restaurant. That's typically what you're going to get if you go to McDonald's or Taco Bell or something like that. You're getting beef, but you're not getting beef cattle. You're getting dairy cow. So every time a cow is milked, her milk goes into this large tank, and it's refrigerated. And this tank is tested every time it's ready to be emptied and taken off for processing. they test it. And if there's any antibiotics or signs of blood or infection or anything like that, the entire tank has to be disposed of. So dairy producers are very, very careful to make sure that any animal that is on antibiotics, when they get milked, that milk does not go into that tank. It's just thrown away. The fluid milk, which is the cream and the skim, is separated, and then it's reblended, and that makes the different levels of milk. So your skim, your 1%, your 2%, your whole milk. Fluid milk is pasteurized and homogenized. Pasteurization is where they actually heat it up and then cool it off, and heat it up and cool it off repeatedly, and that actually kills off any bacteria. And then homogenization is the reason why we don't have to shake the milk jug in the morning when we go to get a glass of milk. This is where fat droplets are dispersed so that the milk stays uniformly mixed. We don't have to shake the milk jug every morning, even though I do it anyway. The excess fat that's removed from the fluid milk is used to make products like your eggnog, your butter, your whipping cream, that sort of thing. Any like fat-heavy dairy product. Other dairy products that are made from fat and butter fat would include things like your ice cream, your yogurt, cheeses, that sort of thing. We'll cover swine in the next video.